Good afternoon, Elder Justice Warriors. I am so excited to have you back with us today in March as we start our commemoration of the year, the start of the pandemic. I just want to remind everyone that this is an iterative process, and while I'm your navigator and your sort of moderator today, I want to invite everyone to be part of the conversation. And for us, that actually starts with the chat. So as you're coming into the webinar today, I'd invite you to add your name and where you work in the chat. It helps us to know each other and build our community. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I'd like to remind everyone that we think it's really important to have an accessible format. So we do have ASL interpretation as well as closed captioning. So please feel free to take advantage of those resources. And we encourage everyone to do that. This is now, I believe, our 10th gathering of the Elder Justice Lunch and Learn. And we meet on the third Thursday of every month from 12 to 1. And we've talked about some hard topics, and we're going to continue to tackle really important conversations. Next month, we'll be discussing fraud and scams in the age of COVID-19. This is a partnership, and we could not have done it without our sponsor, Kaiser Permanente, as well as our planning partners from California Department of Social Services, California Commission on Aging, the Office of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, California Department of Aging, California Long-Term Care Ombudsman Association, and the California State Association of Public Administrators, Public Guardians, and Public Conservators. We are joined today by several leaders in the field of aging, and we have created a conversation that is going to be between Sharon Nevins, who is the Director and Public Guardian for Aging and Adult Services in San Bernardino County, as well as Rigo Saborio, who is Executive Director for a nonprofit. And for those of us who've been in the fight this last year, we know that those partnerships are critical to not just the success of our organizations and serving clients, but actually to saving lives. I also want to acknowledge that as we are 12 months in, that all of us are probably looking back at the last year and acknowledging the horrible losses, the trauma, and the real pain that occurred. And so I want to encourage you to experience that today and acknowledge how challenging it has been for us as leaders. I want you to be, as always, to ask challenging and hard questions and know that this is a process where we're really here to understand how we can best serve you. And so with that, I turn it over to Sharon Nevins. Sharon?
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Nicole. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share this platform with you today. It is an indeed honor, actually, to be able to reflect on our experiences from the past year as we continue to be challenged during this pandemic. The pandemic has definitely created a time of uncertainty, challenges, as well as had a profound impact on all of our lives. Older adults and individuals with disabilities were most impacted, and due to being high risk and also being most vulnerable. When the state implemented the state of emergency orders, stay at home, safer at home orders, it compounded the problem. It basically disconnected individuals from all of their socialization networks and created further isolation. And just to kind of put things in perspective, San Bernardino County is the largest county in terms of land mass in the United States. And we have several remote communities throughout the county, which makes it more difficult to access communities where our older adults reside. So to that end, we had to mobilize and quickly assess our needs internally to figure out what our response would be during this pandemic. What we found is that we quickly had to examine ways by which we could transform our service. In other words, make transformative changes. Transformative changes, which includes taking a close look at how we could create new services, how we could collaborate with existing partners as well as new partners, as well as how we could actually make these changes to more effectively serve our older adults. These changes were bold, and we had to move right away, literally overnight. So let me just quickly talk to you a little bit about change and create, and what we had to create. I'll start there. We had to create several programs to address senior nutrition. We received multiple calls from our clients, new prospective clients, as well as we also reached out and made calls to find out how our older adults and individuals with disabilities were doing. We found that accessing services was indeed a challenge, just basic necessities, food being the most prominent issue. So what we did, we immediately created avenues by which we would be able to more effectively serve individuals. We created food pantries throughout the county via a regionalized approach, and that was very helpful. We also created the senior nutrition grab and go sites. We modified the sites, actually, moved from an in-person congregate setting to accommodate grab and go. And we also increased homebound meals during that time because we recognized that a lot of the older adults could not access those congregate sites anyway. We proceeded to also create the Great Plates delivery program. This particular program had some promises for older adults in that we were able to partner with local restaurants and serve individuals. This, of course, was a major milestone for us because we literally had to create that program overnight by hiring new staff, public service employees to assist us, and also redeployed staff throughout the county to assist us to get that program off the ground. We were able to serve individuals in remote communities that did not have restaurants close by, or communities that did not have transportation to even access food or what have you. So this program proved to be very successful, and we are very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish with the Great Plates delivery program. One of the things that I want to just kind of pivot here to talk about was how we were able to create access to mental health services. As a local area agency on aging for San Bernardino County, we have mental health services embedded in our AAA. This is not common across the state or in a lot of places. But what we did early on in the process is that we forecasted the fact that older adults have mental health issues and challenges that need to be addressed even before the pandemic. And so we have a program in place that's solely tailored to addressing the needs of older adults. This particular program is called AgeWise, and it was actually established and put in place through a partnership that we have with our partners at Behavioral Health. We have licensed clinicians and paraprofessionals that actually basically administer this program as part of our department and services that we offer. So during the pandemic, we had to actually create, expand, and modify the way we were doing business and the way that we provided services, particularly with mental health, so that we could actually expand our reach and actually include more clients in our service. So what we did was we immediately expanded our services to accommodate a 24/7 hotline for seniors. This proved to be very effective, and we received several calls. Individuals needed services and support. Essentially, they needed services to deal with grief, anxiety, depression, loneliness, fear during this pandemic. We know that a lot of individuals were experiencing grief as their loved ones went to the hospital and never returned. a lot of them were actually placed in social isolation because of the fact that when their loved ones went to the hospitals or were ill, they end up being alone based on that. So we recognize that social isolation is a huge issue. And so having that resource in place and those structures and supports to assist the older adults proved to be very, very helpful and beneficial during this critical, very critical time. So as part of our services for individuals with behavioral health challenges, we also were able to institute a telehealth component to our services. This, of course, was major and a big issue for us. It was supported by our county local leadership to infuse technology in our service delivery programs to more effectively serve the older adults. And so the telehealth component really added a huge value to our services. We were able to provide training to all of our staff in behavioral health, basically to help them roll out the telehealth component of their services, and specialized training in telehealth for mental health services, which was even a better benefit for us. So we also were able to, moving forward, we were able to add some peer support and resources and for the individuals as they called in. And we were able to provide support and educational material and even grief counseling and other supportive counseling, and connect individuals to crisis management resources, as well as to link them and provide case management services. So this mental health component or behavior health, as we all know it, proved to be very beneficial, and it really has helped us to more effectively serve individuals with behavior health challenges. We know that this pandemic created behavior health threats to our older adults. And so being in a position to address this early on made a huge difference. Another area that I want to talk about is with our public guardian office. We tend to forget about what that means, as far as we think that public guardian, they're out in the field working with conservatees who may be at risk. But a lot of the conservatees are in the highest level of placement in the system of care. And essentially, what we had to do with our conservatees is basically reach out and provide that extra support even with to them, because we recognized that we were not able to, or we were limited in being able to enter into the facilities to visit with them. So our public guardians office, we were able to actually continue our support groups. We have a support group that we have had in place for some time to offer supports to families and individuals who may have individuals that are in institutional settings or have a loved one that's placed on a conservatorship who they may not have had access to. So we were able to develop or create a virtual format to be able to provide family support. And this support group continued to occur on a Saturday. And we had participants all across the state, out of state, across the nation, calling in to find out how can they get support for their loved ones. So that was really effective and a really good resource for us. I also want to briefly talk about our Ombudsman. Our Ombudsman program is embedded here in San Bernardino County as part of our AAA services. And so here in the county, we experienced a huge surge in COVID cases in the skilled nursing facilities and also our assisted living facilities and residential treatment facilities here in the county. We have over 200 skilled nursing facilities, and a host of assisted living and other congregate types of facilities here in San Bernardino County. So what the county did early on was created a nursing facilities task force. That task force was comprised of our partners at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, our local county, which is our local county hospital, public health, as well as Inland County Emergency Medical Services Agency, which is called ISEMA, the Department of Public Health, and the county administrative offices and several other partners assisted in that effort. We were able to immediately enter into the facility by creating a SOS team, which is essentially an outreach team that entered into those nursing facilities to provide support to staff, to actually provide training on PPE, and to actually work with their nursing staff, provide behavioral health support, because we recognize our first responders and even those individuals working relentless hours in those nursing facilities had huge challenges during this pandemic, and really were just inclined to work every day despite having the need to take care of their own families. And so we provided that extra support. And this same task force, the Skilled Nursing Facility Task Force, was instrumental in working directly with us. And of course, I failed to mention that we were also part of that task force, but they were able to work with us to actually to ensure that our ombudsman had a safe return into the facility. So how did they make that happen? Essentially, what they did was they actually provided training, PPE for us and for our ombudsman staff. And they also surveyed all of the skilled nursing facility, at least I want to say a fraction of them, to determine what type of technology these facilities were utilizing. And they were in turn able to provide a recommendation to us to determine what devices we were to purchase to make it user-friendly for our staff to use. And so we were able to purchase iPads for all of our ombudsman staff that was compatible with what the facilities were using. And to add to that, our local partners at our county hospital, Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, their physicians were able to train all of our staff on their telehealth equipment, and we were able to utilize telehealth. So just adding and increasing the way that we were able to allow access to services, which was really a great help. So everything I talked about, and that's just a few of the services that we were able to create, but none of that would be possible if we did not have the ability to successfully collaborate. Here in San Bernardino County, we are well known for our ability to collaborate. In fact, the strength of our county is our ability to stand strong together, because we know we are stronger together as a county. And during this pandemic, it was like no other. The county came together and really support our efforts. And I do want to say that our Board of Supervisors is extremely supportive of all of our efforts regarding the work that we do for older adults, recognizing how important this work is, and also the work that we do for persons with disabilities. This is so important, and our county CAO leadership, as well as other departments, they all support our efforts during this pandemic. And we all know that everyone has an older adult in their family, be it their mother, their father, their grandparents. So this is an audience or population or individuals that people can relate to. And so they were instrumental in ensuring that we had the proper tools and the resources to actually continue to provide services to the most vulnerable individuals during this critical time. So with that, we also partner closely with our partners at CDA, our California Department of Aging, our network with C4A, and also the AAAs across the state. We are a close-knit group, and we were able to discuss practices and really areas of focus that needed to be given additional attention during this pandemic, such as nutrition and the digital divide, address issues related to social isolation. So we were able to partner and continue to stay close and to support each other as we continue to do this work and address the needs of older adults. I want to go back also to talk about new partnerships or expanded partnerships that we were able to develop during this pandemic. When I talked about Great Place, what I kind of underscored was the fact that our relationships with the restaurants. We, I can literally say, we really felt that we were in the business of running a restaurant or running a corporation that had oversight of restaurants, because we were able to bring on several restaurants to actually serve our clients. And I do want to say that the restaurant partners that we brought on were extremely awesome, compassionate, and caring for the older adults that they were serving. We had restaurant providers who would actually contact us when they served the food, delivered the food to individuals' home, and came back to say, maybe you need to check on Mrs. Doe or Mrs. John, Mr. John, or what have you, because conditions may not be so right, and to ensure that there was no form of neglect or abuse taking place, and to make sure that they were safe and protected. So the restaurant partners really stood up, and we know that when you're in isolated communities and isolation as a result of sheltering in place, there's not a lot of eyes laid on the individuals and day to day. And so that was a really good resource that we had, because they were delivering food to our clients and to individuals that we were serving throughout the county as part of this program. I also want to talk about our partnership with the health plans. Our health plans have stepped up time after time to support us. During the pandemic, the health plans were able to support us by providing us financial assistance to help with providing meals for individuals. When we were able to open up a site for meals via Grab and Go in one of the housing community complexes, the health plan was able to provide us that financing to do that and to continue to provide support to the individuals that we serve to make sure that they're getting nutritious, balanced meal and to keep them safe in their communities. We also had the health plans to really take initiative to, I want to say, just assist us during the hot, inclement weather here in San Bernardino during the summer months. And they were instrumental in working with our APS, our Adult Protective Services staff, to go door to door to deliver fans to keep our seniors cool. And I mean literally cool, because we know that it gets hot here in Southern California. So we appreciate that partnership. And so we were able to forge new partnerships as well as build upon existing partnerships to make all of this work. And so we certainly see huge value in that. And we even brought on new nutrition providers, new providers for our elderly nutrition program, which proved to be very helpful as well. These new providers were able to provide services in remote areas of the county when our current nutrition providers reached their maximum limit as far as the capacity or their ability to serve based on the distance involved and multiple other factors. So we were very pleased with that, and that really helped us to really make a difference in the community. So let's kind of move on and look at how we were able to change during this pandemic. It's very clear that change is inevitable. We could not get through this pandemic unless we make change. In fact, the pandemic in and of itself triggered change. Change in which we do business, as I stated earlier, changed all of our lives. This pandemic brought about real change. And just to kind of let you know, the change in the way we do business. You know, before the pandemic, we thought there was no way we could put all of our staff or a fraction of our staff even on telecommute status. Well, that changed immediately when the pandemic hit, because we had to really look at how to do our business differently. We had to ensure that our employees had the appropriate technology devices to utilize and to telework at home. We also had to really look at teleworking, I want to say technology with the population that we serve. And we realized that there is a huge divide, and even trying to make pivots or make some effort to close that divide has been a huge challenge and continue to be a huge challenge, which I'm sure that is not something that's common to us, but system-wide. The change that occurred really helped us to see that we really have to hit the ground running and continue to make every effort we can to continue to expand technology to our older adults. So we also were able to learn a lot of lessons during this pandemic. One of the things I want to highlight that we did learn is that equity in accessing services is huge. It's very important. Because of social isolation, remote areas, or what have you, we still had to ensure that we were able to provide access to clients, readily access. We are so concerned about our older adults, and we want to make sure that they have appropriate access and that is readily, and services are readily available and accessible to them. And so what we found also is that we have a very diverse older adult population in our county. We realized that as we partner with restaurants and ensuring that we were able to offer different cultural options and so forth, as far as the food is concerned, et cetera. And we had to basically step back to really look at making sure all of our services is provided in the different languages. And also we had an opportunity to really understand and know who our older adults were and where they were located in the county. So it gave us an opportunity to provide additional services, to expand our role in serving them, to meet whatever need came up. We continue to try to meet them at their point of need. And I believe it's safe to say that the services that we provided during this pandemic, even though it moved away from congregate settings and the social settings, we were able to provide more one-on-one, personal touch, person-centered services, which I believe was really necessary and effective during this pandemic. We understand that there's still a lot of work to be done. I do want to say that we are still in a pandemic. And as we emerge from the pandemic, we realize that there's still things that we have to focus on, such as the technology, and really continuing to form new ways of providing services. So, you know, as I stated, we are emerging, you know, as we emerge from this pandemic. I believe, and I am confident that we can do so with hope as well as optimism. And the reason why I say that is because just taking a look at where we've come from when we started this pandemic, I believe that there is hope there. We now have vaccination, and we have an integral role here in San Bernardino County, assisting our older adults to access the vaccination. When our county had their press release and basically ensured that senior vaccination was a priority, we immediately were able to work with our county CAO office and our local county board of supervisors to ensure that we instituted strategies to ensure that seniors 65 and older had access to the vaccination. So what we did was here in the county, we actually developed different vaccination clinics, basically just to serve the older adults or seniors. By developing these clinics, enabled us to ensure that seniors had readily access, but also it ensured that seniors, their needs were being met, and that they were able to work with staff who they trusted. Basically, the staff here at our office here in our department, who actually were able to register them. They basically provide telephone contact and calls to get them registered. We were able to establish our own separate events through the county processes that's been established in the county, so that these vaccination events were solely tailored to us for our seniors. But also we were able to provide transportation and other resources for the seniors to ensure that they actually made it to these vaccination events. The vaccination strategy was basically three-pronged. First, it was to have vaccination clinics at the senior sites and also the community centers. And so the senior sites, of course, were the sites where we provide the grab-and-go meals, and also the sites that were previously utilized as the congregate meal sites. So the older adults already were familiar with those locations. And so, as I mentioned, the first prong was to provide vaccination at those sites, and we were able to identify different sites in the various supervisory districts here in the county. And so once we identified those sites, the county made the vaccine available for those older adults at those sites. The second prong to this approach was to have pop-up sites. And those pop-up sites were designed to really address equity issues and to ensure that the African-American churches and other entities had access to the vaccination. So we provide staff to support those events as well. And the county has been ensuring that the vaccination has been made readily available to those sites. And lastly, the last phase I want to say of that is to ensure that we have a process in place for homebound vaccination. And I am very proud to say that our first vaccination for our homebound seniors will start actually today. And it's probably happening as we speak. So we are very fortunate to be able to have an expanded role in the vaccination process and ensuring that older adults or seniors get that vaccination and that they're able to maintain, able to be safe during this pandemic. As we move forward, I do want to say that we know that we have a master plan on aging that's in place, and we look forward to implementing the master plan for aging. A lot of the things that we are currently working on has really given us a really big picture as to what we need to do and how we can actually make our system of care and service delivery here in the county more age-friendly. And so we want to make sure that our services continue to be inclusive, and also that the older adults are not isolated. And so we look forward to implementing the master plan. So I want to say and leave you with the fact that I believe here in San Bernardino County that we have made major strides to adapt to this pandemic, to create change during this pandemic, to innovate during this pandemic. and also to ensure that we stay safe and protected during this pandemic as we seek to serve and provide services to our older adults and individuals with disabilities.
Thank you, Sharon. We appreciate that presentation. I especially really appreciated the emphasis on mental health and that you've already had it as part of your service offerings well before COVID impacted our communities. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Rigo Saborio. He is President and CEO of St. Barnabas Senior Services. Rigo, we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Nicole. And I want to thank you and Elder Justice for having me today. And it's also a pleasure to be serving on this panel with Sharon Nevins. I'm a fan, and I'm even more amazed of all the work that that's happened in San Bernardino County under her leadership. Some of my remarks will sort of parallel and echo some of the things that Sharon has been able to do with her team and her network in San Bernardino County. Let me share a little bit about my experience and in terms of being the executive director at St. Barnabas Senior Services, which is a community-based organization in the Los Angeles area. And our mission essentially is to empower a diverse community of older adults to live well, feel well, and age well in the community with dignity and respect. So we're all about providing a comprehensive set of services that will enable folks to not only survive in community, but also thrive. And when I mean in community, is outside of congregate living, out of nursing homes, out of assisted living. They're mostly independent, but come to us with significant needs. And to give you an idea of, thinking about COVID and what that experience has been like, man, we really have been in ground zero. I mean, if you think about, obviously we're all informed with the data now. We know who's been impacted the most and who has been the most vulnerable. That's exactly who we serve, because we serve high risk areas. And within those high risk areas in Los Angeles, we're serving the most vulnerable older adults, 60 plus. They're low income. Many of them are dependent on Social Security as a sole source of income. The majority of the clients that we're over 90% of the older adults that we're serving are Black, immigrant, people of color, and also come to us with limited English proficiency. In fact, the majority of those that we're serving are either Korean speaking or Spanish speaking immigrants. And they're coming to us because they are insecure in terms of housing, in terms of food, and they're showing up with multiple chronic conditions, still able to function, but maybe sort of a step away from really plunging into greater need and greater assistance, and even perhaps having to go into a nursing home, or because of financial reasons ending up homeless. And clearly that includes having limited mobility, which impacts their independence. And so kind of sharing with you, like Sharon had mentioned also what was in place. I mean, it's very similar to, because we are, one of our main contracts with St. Barnabas is AAA of Los Angeles, the city of LA. So there's a lot of services that Sharon specified that we were offering pre-COVID, sort of like in the heyday, and everything was great and people were coming to us. We were managing a number of senior centers in the area. Through that, we were also managing congregate meal sites, where we had hundreds of people coming to our congregate meal sites. We had over, about 15 sites that we were managing. And then of course, we were also doing homebound, home delivered meals as well, providing case management, transportation, and then also family caregiver support services and technology training as well. And in addition, we also were providing public education through our Discovery Series events that we have in person, and also managing advocacy. We founded and manage a coalition of aging organizations in the County of Los Angeles. So it's called the Los Angeles Aging Advocacy Coalition. And we also established a cadre of older adult volunteers, which we call Agents for Change, because the old adage of nothing about us without us. So we wanted to make sure. So we had all these things in place. It was robust. People were active. Most of our case management services were in person, which was the preferred method for many of our clients. And then I think, as Nicole and Sharon have pointed out, a year ago, boom, things just came to a stop. And I mean literal. So overnight, over a weekend, we had to pivot. Next slide, please. And as a result of that, we had to essentially really just start with the basics, which is, as Sharon's saying, kind of the home delivered meals. We had a shift from people coming to us for home, for congregate meals. And so basically everything went home. And so in addition to the hundreds of meals that we were serving to homebound, bedbound individuals, we were now having to do the same for folks that would normally come to our congregate meal sites. We were having to take it to them. And then the other major piece of it, of course, was just the connection, the well-being calls and the checkup calls and the social connectivity calls. So we had a shift from those being mostly face-to-face to having to be done by telephone. So those were the two major things that we shifted and pivoted very quickly overnight, essentially, because the word came from the city that we were closing down on a Friday, and by Monday we had to reopen with the new kinds of services, and this is what happened. So in some ways that kind of helped keep things together initially, but as you can imagine, next slide please, what you start to see is that the impact on our clients. So it wasn't soon after that we started to hear from our clients, and through these wellness calls and through when we were delivering meals, about their sense of feeling isolated, feeling alone, and having this overwhelming sense of fear and anxiety, all then sort of leading up to being in low mood and in fact becoming depressed. And then, of course, on top of that, you really started to now see, end of life issues come into place, and really, it really tore our heartstrings to hear, in situations where our older adults themselves, maybe not themselves dealing with end of life, but with a loved one passing away who didn't live in the same household, and then not having to be able to go to their services and having that closure. It was mind-boggling and really so unfortunate. And then, of course, on top of that, they had, they started to experience access problems, to personal protection equipment, masks, sanitation products, things that, that made them feel more secure and safe. They didn't have that access. And basic goods. I mean, we could all remember the run to the market to get toilet paper. My God, we all, it's like we'd get there and nobody was, it's like nothing was there. Well, imagine that, being on steroids for older adults who are already having a hard time getting out of the house. And when they would get out and finally get to the market, there was nothing left. And so there was those issues. And then in some cases, like now that they're having to have meals at home instead of coming to their car meal sites, the reality was that some people didn't even have microwaves to be able to heat their food. And not to mention affordability issues in terms of housing. Some of them actually worked, or their family caregiver or loved ones in the household worked, and then their hours being reduced or completely eliminated. And then the issue of being overwhelmed with the possibility of getting evicted, emergency service, mobility. And then, of course, tech, adding to the tech issues, little to no skills we found. The majority of our clients, which then obviously lacked access to service applications, being able to use Instacart, for example. And then lack of connectivity, that they didn't have the benefit of Zoom because they just didn't know how to use it. And that's what became very apparent. So we had to, again, then add more, to the overall services. Next slide, please. And so we had to address the social and the emotional issues. And we had to figure out, okay, short of being able to see each other in person and not being able to use Zoom, what can we do? So we identified a platform using a telephone, which is what's called Uber Conference, which enabled us to access a number of clients all at one time, without having to go through all these, steps and, hoops and steps for the client to say, press 1 if you want to do this, press 2 this. All we needed was their phone number, and then we were able to get everybody on a call. And through this method, we were able to teach group classes. We were able to hold games. And so that was one thing. We also held coffee hour, where we actually had them call in and they would actually meet with their respective senior center director, someone that they trusted. And then they were able to have the connectivity there as well and get information from there. And also, talk to, and then we would send a home, newsletter as well, because people needed information. They were wanting more information, not just about COVID, but just other things that were going on. So we created a newsletter, and we were able to send these newsletters with the meals that we were delivering so that people had access. And as you can see the quote on this, and it said, reading your St. Barnabas newsletter at home was the first time I've been able to take my mind off of COVID. It gave me a break. So these are the things that we were trying to do ourselves to alleviate some of the emotional issues that our clients were facing. And clearly with the technology issues, we were also trying to figure out and assess, given the spectrum of where people may fall, because we didn't want to make assumptions that everyone knew how to use it, or on the other side, nobody knew how to use it. So we assessed, got a feel for where people fell. And so we started to create a connectivity through, virtual opportunities or telephone, depending on where folks fell. So we did that. And then we created opportunities for remote digital literacy. The best method for most of our clients was to learn technology through, in-class training. Short of that, we had to actually literally be able, we were sending instructions by mail of how to get on a Zoom, particularly targeting those that had some basic understandings to be able to utilize Zoom, to get on for Zoom for classes, for exercise. And so that was good. Now, we also played a major role in beginning to advocate to underscore this need, because St. Barnabas has been in the business of providing technology training and services for nearly 2 decades. So we already knew, and in some ways, even before COVID, we were the canary in the coal mine. We were letting our stakeholders and people of power know about the digital divide, but we kept hitting walls. And it's nothing like a pandemic to really shine a light on this thing that really gets people's attention. So we really took this opportunity to really bring that message home. There's a huge digital divide that we must address. Next slide. So as an example, we have a client, just to kind of, given everything we did to stabilize. So Maria Sanchez was someone that had been coming to St. Barnabas. In fact, she has a lineage of time with us. Her parents actually were clients of St. Barnabas before Maria and her sister became clients. And so, but when Maria was here, she was utilizing all these different services, very connected, getting her meals, getting her classes, exercise, everything on site. And then things shut down. And then the fact that all of a sudden she felt those issues that I described through what we were able to do with the newsletter, the telephone calls, and some other emergency services that we were able to provide in funding, it really helped to stabilize her situation. But then one day, one of her folks that she lives with actually came down with COVID. She had to, that person had a quarantine. So Maria found herself out of housing, and we literally had to stabilize her. And so she came out, we were able to provide emergency funding to find her short-term housing. And she literally walked out with the clothes on her back, and we were able to purchase, the clothes on her, that she was able to wear then over a certain number of weeks. And then with all the services that I mentioned, she felt connected, she felt stabilized. And so that is how we really were helping Maria. And like Maria, we helped hundreds and if not thousands of older adults in that process. Next. Now, then the next big thing came, and I think Sharon alluded to this, is the vaccine. And again, whom we're serving in a high-risk area, it's a huge issue. Early on, when we're in late January, early February, when the vaccines became available, we already started to see that there was already a high number of our clients who didn't have access, who wanted the vaccine. There was no such thing as hesitancy. They wanted the vaccine, but it was an issue of being able to have access. And so, and then they also didn't know all the information They needed, and then of course, when they found out how to go on, get an appointment, there was no such thing as going online. Are you kidding me? I have technology issues or I have broadband issues. So we established, a number of things in place to address some of those issues. We established a resource center to provide information. We also recently got funded, and we're going to do a massive outreach campaign to really build on some of the outreach we've already been doing. And then we actually instructed our case managers to pivot and help our clients, with online appointments so that they could overcome that. We also we emphasized transportation to our, for our older adults to mega sites where, otherwise they wouldn't be able to get there, and they would actually feel better because they had a driver who they trusted and who they knew already previously be able to take them. So we did some of that. And then of course we established partnerships along the way because we said, hey, we're here, we want to partner, we want you to, we were talking primarily the health sector, health plans, community health centers, or government health departments. And we said, we as a CBO already, we're in a high risk area, come do some micro targeting in our neighborhood, let's start to partner. Next slide. And so, we move things along, and then we, obviously with the resource center, it just, this is in more detail, and I can touch on this perhaps later in the Q&A. But again, it just really took, deeper dive in the resource center, getting information, doing the outreach, and using that information center to also get a sense of who is interested in getting vaccinated. So when through these partnerships that we were establishing for the vaccines, we were able to connect and refer our clients to these locations. Next. So I think back in everything we've done, fast forward, sort of the lessons learned. I think Sharon touched on this, equity. I mean, there are real inequities, and the digital divide is huge, folks. You already know this, I know, but I can't help but continue to underscore it. Like I said, we were a canary in the coal mine. And, now, I am just raising these issues from the mountaintops to say, we need to address this. It's a critical issue. And it's not just broadband, access and affordable broadband, and it's not just devices, it's training. Because what good is having devices or a smartphone or, the broadband if you don't even know how to navigate the internet or utilize devices to work through that? And that we're going to need to pay much greater attention. And even further, we also need to do more work when we think about the intersect of older adults with low income, and then those of people of color and limited English proficiency. We need to do more research to really figure out how to best teach digital divide, because you can teach it till the cows come home, but some people, unless you take the right approach and really understand it from the end user's perspective, why they're not using it, I think we're going to continue to throw solutions at the problem but not get resolutions. So we got to do more research from and do more co-creation, and and in outreach we got to do special and more intentional outreach in reaching multilingual Black, immigrant, people of color communities. And we have to be consistent about it and continuous, and there's no one way. You got to think of it as a multifaceted approach. And then we also have to figure out how to invest in our case management. I think of our case managers, and particularly in the social services area, as people who are key to successful well-being, but being extremely undervalued and underpaid. It's almost like the teachers in elementary school. It's the equivalent. And I think we need to do more to recognize the value of this, and to actually add more product and service within that scope as well, so that particularly our most vulnerable adults of low income can enjoy the same value of service as the more affluent seniors do. Next. And also another learned aspect through this process is people need to pay attention to community-based organizations. We always start with big, people want to, I think, and we understand this, you know, you want to start large, you want to start, large scale and do things big, but sometimes you miss the mark, in doing so. And you got to be thinking right from the get-go how to work with community-based organizations that are trusted in the communities, that can go far and deep into communities. I mean, we're experiencing it now that after 2 months into this vaccine process, we're now getting calls like crazy. It's like, well, we're having issues here, we're having issues there. What can you do? Well, and so I'm glad it's happening, but that should be something that's right from the get-go. When a pandemic or some other issue happens, let's not wait. We should start building those relationships now with community-based organizations, really recognize those. And I really was happy to hear Sharon talk about collaborations. And I think collaborations need to go deep, far, and wide within communities as well. Next. And of course, advocacy. As I mentioned a couple months ago, we were singing through the rooftop saying, mega sites are great, but you got to bring those vaccines into the neighborhoods. You got to do micro targeting, and we start and advocating from that standpoint. And so advocacy is so critical. I know most of you here today are advocates. Keep doing that. I think it's crucial. Us being the little guy and the part of a large system. We live these things, firsthand. And so we were happy to be part of those conversations and advisory groups, committees, in different areas, talking about the vaccines as an issue, and the digital divide is another. And also, I think I am really excited about the California Master Plan. I was fortunate enough and honored to be part of that group that created that plan in partnership with Kim and Secretary Ghali, on behalf of Governor Newsom, and really have an outstanding product that's come out, thanks to all the colleagues that were involved in the leadership. And there's a local playbook that goes with that plan too. I think it's tremendous. And I'm seeing that we're gonna have to wrap up. So let's see, next slide, real quick. I'll just wrap up with this and say that as I think about the future, I don't think there's any way going back to what it was and who we exactly were. I think it's going to have to be a blended approach. It's going to be a little bit of who we were and more of the virtual realities. And with that, it's going to take, a significant investment in our infrastructure to enable us to do that. It's one thing to want to do that, and have that passion, but without the actual resources and support of others, it won't happen. And and in terms of managers of senior centers, we need to upgrade senior centers anyway. So this is a wonderful time to do that, to prepare ourselves for the future. And with that, I'll end my comments.
Thank you so much, Rigo. We appreciate that excellent presentation. So I think you both really outlined some important pieces of information, and we filled the time. So I'm so sorry to say we're not going to have an opportunity to get to questions today, but I did want to highlight that Rigo and Sharon have generously provided their contact information, their email, on the screens. And so if you'd like to reach out to them, you have questions about the programs that they launched, want to learn how you can maybe do that in your area or partner with them, I encourage you to reach out to them. We also dropped the link for our next event for April in the chat. We are going to be visited by Mickey Nozaki. She's the Director of Fraud Prevention and Education Programs for California Health Advocates. And we're going to be talking about that fraud and scam prevention, particularly in light of COVID-19. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We appreciate the community we have built. Want to send a special thanks to our speakers, Sharon Nevins and Rigo Saborio, for providing amazing content and important information. We look forward to seeing everyone back here next month. Have a wonderful day.